Susan has dribbled on for a while. That will have had an influence on the way you're lying on the floor. And how is the floor today? How's the floor coming along? You've been working on it. You've been rolling on it, pushing into it, pushing off it, thumping it, prodding it, leaving it. So how's it meeting you today? If you ask the floor how you were today, what would it say? What would it relate to you? Oh, you're very flatty today, or you're very archy today, or you're very whatever, hokey today, or you're very bony today, you're very soft today, very sprawly today, very long, quite short today. You're sleepy today. You're not really here today. Let's say. Now, how can you use the floor to tell you some information about the curviness of your trunk? How does the floor experience the backward curve of your thoracic spine and the forward curve of your lumbar spine? Of course, the floor can't directly sense the curves at the front of your chest and your belly, but it infer it from what it feels from behind. So if the floor is telling you about some shortening or some lengthening of the curves on the floor, would that give you a clue about the curves of the length, shortening of the length? I do not. Bring your legs a little bit wider than you would have them habitually. Yeah. If you can have them long on the floor, if that really is compromised too far. And quietly press a little bit into your elbows and use that to initiate moving towards the top of your head, shifting the foundation of the back of your head be more the top of your head. I'm going to start using stiffer words today, a little bit. The foundation is the basic support. At the moment, basic support is the back of your head, that part of you. So slowly and breathe. So I've given you the initiation point, pushing the elbow, but maybe you sneak in some other ones there. So some people, if you hold your breath, you'll tighten the belly. And actually tightening the belly might not help you go to the top. It might be the opposite movement. So pay attention to the respiration and use the respiration to check that your belly is free. Using the tool of respiration. That's it. To inform you. And then as the movement grows, if you feel that it would be a reasonable thing to do, allow the movement to grow. So you continue to push your elbows and then your hands into the floor and use that movement to come up to them. Now, depending on what's happened in your belly, that could be impossible or somewhat possible. And if doesn't feel right, you just don't do it. Just come up to sitting any way you like. And stay there for a while in sitting. Reacquaint yourself with your sit bones. And that finding of your sit bones generally requires a little bit of straightening in the back or even arching forward in the back. Find again that sort of position of equipoise with the head so that the head is neither forward nor backward. Just take your head through the arc a little bit to remind yourself with that internal reference. The pathway of movement, the head through space, forwards and backwards. Feeling that changing relationship between the bone of the chin and the bone of the sternum are obviously connected by the bones of the neck. And lie back on your back. And begin this exploration again of changing your foundation more to the top of your head. This time with a bias towards the right elbow. So that the pushing into the floor, the quiet, gentle pushing into the floor, the thinking that you actually monitor this, because if you really push your right elbow into the floor, it will shift your weight towards the left. So actually don't so much push, like feel the difference, is allow your weight to shift more to the right elbow. So my language was not precise enough then. In fact, it's not even not precise, it's just incorrect. So as your weight shifts towards the top of the head, and you also think about this idea that the weight is going more onto the right elbow, and that what does that require? What shift does that require in your trunk? That the chest is elevating to allow the weight to go to the top of the head, and also more to the right side of the chest. So perhaps there's an element of the left side of the chest lifting higher, the left shoulder. Some kind of element of rolling more towards the right side. Allow that movement to go so that you could lift, roll via the right up. Still going to the top of your head. Not a complete roll onto the right side. I mean, try that first, and you'll feel that won't invite the same kind of Hatha-esqueness. This idea of coming up more arched than rounded. And again, if the initiation is to scrunch in the top of your tummy, you'll come up rounded. Scrunch, flex. No scrunching anywhere. So no, the neck stays actually long and the head comes up, hanging back. So there's an element of this where you might only get a taste of, it's like the belly is lifting, a long belly is pushing forward and lifting you up. Yeah, I mean, this is your psoas muscles are all going mental. There is no doubt about muscular. The activation here and the organisation. So I'll remind you again, this is, in a way, I'm starting to see what a simple concept this is and how profoundly difficult it is. So notice how you respond cognitively and emotionally to something that your body simply doesn't understand. And that's why I've been sharing with you my process, so that it's fine to have that. And that the coming back might be easier, might be more informative. So Helen, you might like to just sit up and look at some people. Yeah, just have a watch some people. Yep. Remember what I said, sometimes we don't encourage in ATM lessons people looking at other people, but in this context, and in the context of what I said this morning, an external resource, you've got some resources here, and I'm not saying people in the room are doing it correctly. There is no correct, of course. But just to get an idea of the variation, the aesthetic, and how people are exploring this. And can I also just say, this is not the way to get off the floor that we would teach people. Right? This is not, if you're going to go and work in a rehab centre or work with old people, do not teach them to get up off the floor like this, because this is a judo thing. It's not the easiest way to get up. It's a means to an end, where it's a cheat. Yeah, good luck with that. I'm still only on line 3. Okay, so next time just lie on your back and rest. This is a bizarre way of organising yourself. Only a process for learning, though. The outcome of this is what it is. And how do you find an approximation that you're satisfying? Or as Jane said on Monday, when you can come up against some kind of barrier or some difficulty, what's your response? Okay, now's the time. This is a time where I don't need to know this. I've done what I can. I've broken it down. I've used my resources, internal, external. I'll leave it now. Come up to sitting. And have your hands leaning on the floor behind you. Your knees can be bent, I think. It doesn't say something. And lean on your hands a little bit more gently. Well, you can lean on your hands a little bit more, and lift your legs a little bit off the floor. So that's it, leaning. Notice how the initiation for most people is to lean back. And can you find a way that in the leaning back lifts the legs? Notice, there are other options that you could push off with your feet, but that's using a different kind of thing. But it's the leaning back so that the weight shifts more onto the hands and the legs lift, and the back has more or less, is more towards an arched position than a rounded position. So you could just roll back, fingers forward. Yeah, good point, Kirsten. Fingers forward, and that's it. So again, this is not what we would normally teach. We teach the pelvic floss and you roll back and you kind of go back more towards the top of your sacrum, but you're maintaining this idea of the trunk staying relatively erect as you go back. And you can see it. And then eventually keep growing the movement until you maybe find yourself on your elbows. So if your hands are really far back, that's going to be quite a mission. So you might want to just slide your hands a little bit more forward so that your elbows are a little bit more available. But as you go back onto your elbows, your legs stay lifted. With this idea that the back is not rounding backwards. No. It's not, yeah. Yeah, it's a mission. You know, it's not some mental judo role. Yeah, and keep the eyes on the horizon. Just don't keep adding in. Oh, everyone's going to kill you now. Because they, but you're right. Yes, that's the constant, pretty much. As much as possible. Like it's not fixed. You know, it's not. You're not nailed there. It's a gentle orientation, but it's the intention is there. Yeah. And the intention is there that your back is more towards the extended than the flex. Right. So I've used a really technical language. I was kind of going with rounded, which is backwards. That's flex. Arch is extended. And then you come back up the same way. So the feet going to the floor brings you back up off your elbows. And there's kind of some balance points there. You know, you are, Narayan and I were talking the other day, you really explore, you know, you roll off your sit bones. There might be a bit of a, as you go from your sit bones onto soft tissue. Because your foundation has to shift, but it's not shifting because of movement in your lumbar spine. So you're not doing a pelvic flop, in other words. Huh? Didn't let go. Paradox. No, that's not true. You know, 8th, 9th, 10th standard judo masters not known for their six pack. Yeah. Yeah. So Western obsession with six pack. Aesthetic. It's not aesthetic. It's not a function. It's not a functional thing. Yeah. Okay. Rest on your back. No, how? La tartaruga. The turtle. Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah, it is. Turtle belly. Oh, that's what the turtle belly. Yeah, that's great. Oh, the Italians are so poetic. And in Australia, it's six pack. As opposed to, yeah, it says a lot. The turtle belly. And rest, 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 and feel the influence, sense the influence of 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 the work and the absence of work and the the struggle. Like what's your response to the struggle? There's a physical response to the struggle, like maybe fatigue or twitching or something. What's your emotional response to the struggle? What's your cognitive response? Batten down the hatches, clench the jaw, clench the fist. I'm not seeing that here, but maybe you're sensing the beginning of that, the beginning of ambition. Your response to challenge. So if I put it in like another context, let's say that little mini challenge when I couldn't remember what I wanted say, that's a little challenge. What's my response to it? My response to it was to leave it and pause. I could have gone, oh God, what is it? Tell me. I could have used mnemonics. I could have used all sorts of strategies. A whole bunch of things you can do with that challenge, or you can rest with it. Let things emerge. You know, it's the sort of the sleep on it idea. So bring your arms up in front of you, so towards the ceiling, straight. Bring your legs together. And if it feels useful, you can either simply imagine it, think it through, go ahead and do it. Imagine that you're going to come more to the top of your head, and in that movement, coming forward, come up to sitting. And your hands kind of pulling you forward. You might have done this with your children. You know, you pull them forward and their head lags back a bit. And they don't want to sit up. Or the little boys that I work with who don't have head control. You do it with a tiny newborn baby, they don't have head control, their head lags back. So if the small of your back flattens, that's the opposite movement. Small, in this kata, the small of the back arches. Lumbar spine, lower back. It's such a counterintuitive movement. See why we had put it into later in the script. And then find a way to sitting and stay in sitting. Sit for a moment. Have your legs somewhat apart. Yeah, it arches a little bit. Now, if it rockets up into a fixed arch, then you could also get stuck. These are all tendencies and trends. Okay, so you're all sitting, even if you're just doing all this in your imagination. Have your legs apart and your arms forward. And your eyes stay on the horizon. You begin to arch your back, lower back, so the belly comes forward. Might not be a big movement because your legs are straight, so this is kind of requiring your hamstrings to lengthen a little bit. But just go back and forth a little bit so that you arch your back, push your belly forward. And notice the belly coming forward brings your chest sort of forward between your arms a little bit. So allow that belly coming forward to erect the whole of the spine. So it influences the sternum coming forward and up. There is a kind of zombie aspect to this movement. There's a bit of a worship thing happening here. Now, if you keep your eyes on the horizon, what happens if your sternum lifts? The relationship between the sternum and the chin changes. And it's so, again, it's this idea that the head stays in sort of an external orientation stays the same, but it's it has to adjust because of what's happening underneath, foundation underneath. So often they call this sort of thing the mobile adjuster. Now, if I said that your eyes didn't have to stay on the horizon and your head was just simply carried back as you lifted your chest, where would it take your head? Where would it take your eyes? You become stargazers. Yeah. So try the difference. Try the difference. Try really hard for the difference. So what turns this into the judo thing is that the eyes stay forward, because if you don't keep your eye on the person that you're fighting, they're going to kick out. You can't just let your head go back and be a stargazer. There's no room for being a stargazer when someone's about to kick the lights out. And then just go back, terrible, sorry, James C. Keep that movement happening where you maintain that tendency of an arch along the whole length of your spine and lie back. Aren't you glad that you asked for the kata to be done in the morning so that you didn't miss out? Who's going? Linda. Yeah. And rest. And rest. And again, notice your responses. I don't understand it. I can't do it. Remind yourself, Susan can understand it. She still can't do it. Now, I had dinner with some 30 graduates, and I was telling them what they were doing. I could see by their face that, you know, a trainer saying in public, I can't do this, I don't understand it, which is what I said at the beginning of the week. I'm not saying to you keep that a secret, but it's not something, you know, think about the context of that. You know, someone who's meant to be really smart and clever and, you know, is running a whole training program. It's somewhat exposing. So, you know, have a sort of a contemplation of that. I mean, what I've realised over the weekend, I can't remember whether I said this to the whole group or just some of you, is it was a great risk, because you could have all completely rejected me, therefore, as the leader of, you know, the so-called leader of the group. Right? And therefore, if you talk about this out of context, outside of this room, you'll see, you might get a different reaction from other people. Yeah, understand what I'm saying? I'm not forbidding you to secrecy. You think about the audience and think about how that would land and how it might be interpreted. Not, you know, in a way I don't mind. You know, my reputation hopefully is strong enough. But for people who haven't got that appreciation for that, an expert knows what they don't know. They know that they don't know things. You know, that's another definition of an expert. If you think an expert is someone who knows everything, then what we've been doing this week is going to be very challenging. Putting it out there. Yeah. Angela just said, you only need, for a teacher, you only need to know 10% more than the people that you're teaching. Yes. Well, that's when I first started at uni. They said, don't worry, you just have to be, sometimes they'd say a chapter ahead. And sometimes they'd say, look, you don't need to be the next, you know, you need to be a page ahead. But, anyway, whatever. Okay, come up to sitting any old how. Do it in a way that satisfies you, where you do have expertise. And have your legs a little bit apart, and this idea of the back being more towards arched, so extended, than more towards legs. So just, you know, wherever on that spectrum is comfortable that you can maintain. And have one arm forward and one arm back. Maybe if you all have your right arm forward, that would be good for me, and I can track together. One arm back behind you. Oh, no, on the floor. Correct me. No, I read it wrong. Yeah, so, yeah, on the floor. It just says here one arm behind, but I can see that would be good. On the floor, that's it. And now find a way that you can, it says teeter on your butt. Right, so you can lift your legs a little bit, if you want to. And that you can go a little bit backwards and a little bit forward. So the spine maintains its same kind of organization, same kind of shape the spine does. And you're going to go a little bit backwards, leaning a little bit back and coming a little bit forward. And you teeter there like a, you know, teeter, it's a seesaw. Off arm, if you want to. And breathe. Faces on the horizon. Do the same thing with your legs on the ground. And feel what pulls you forward. So the same muscle that pulls you forward is the muscle that plays out to lower you back. Now the interesting thing about this psoas muscle, this hip flexor muscle, you know, I remember Frank Wildman giving me an FI once and telling me that mine is obviously very short and skinny. Beautiful, like a fabulous relationship. But also he did tell me it's the filet mignon. It's that's the muscle that's filet mignon in the cow. Psoas muscle in us. Huh? Filet mignon. I don't eat red meat, so it means nothing to me. But I have bought it. It's very expensive. Very tender. It's round. Very red. Like so, it's a lot of fast twitch sort of fibers. Good, and lie on your back. Just FYI, the next instruction I've written NAH, N-A-H, which means I'm not doing this here. So arrange yourself so that you're popped onto your forearms. And in this position, so your eyes on the horizon, beautiful, as much as possible. And find this orientation for your spine that is more arched forward. So the belly and the sternum lift away from the floor. Might only be a tiny, tiny movement. And then, of course, the sinking back into the floor will help you, inform you. So allow yourself to really sink back in, which is what we've actually encouraged you to do in most ATMs. In order for your head to be on the horizon, we normally encourage you to let your sternum sink back into the floor, right? Because then that allows your head to be more erect comfortably. So this is the opposite. For your head to be really comfortable here, your sternum goes down into the floor. Yeah. We're doing the opposite now. So if you're starting to feel work in the front of your throat, yes, you will. If you keep your eyes on the horizon. Yeah. Now keeping that kind of orientation in the back. So not really arched, but the tendency towards arch, lift your legs a few times. Now actually I would recommend you bend your knees. You can, some of you can lift your straight leg, but it's a big demand on your back. So just have your knees soft. You can feel the difference if you like, if you're a thrill seeker, of lifting a straight leg. And see why I might say just go easy on yourself and just have your knees a bit bent and lift the leg. Like an antenatal class. I have to make you laugh. You're getting way too serious. You just have to let go of your bellies a little bit more. Have a belly laugh. And then in this position, with this coming forward in this arching, how could you grow this movement to bring yourself up to sitting? Where would the activation continue? Yeah. Yeah. I said yes, like you've all got it. Got to be careful, right? That wasn't careful. I wasn't careful there. If the whole room is getting it, you can go yes. Otherwise, you're setting up that there's a yes or a no. And now there's an interesting thing here. So go back onto your forearms and come up to sitting with your back folded, go forward. So they're kind of rolling up. The contrasts are different. This is a bit of respite for some people. Now, see, Kylie Minogue would be going, I don't want to sink my chest in. Because she lives her life with her tits out. She's stuck here. Because I used to always use her as an example when I was teaching biomechanics. And this dear young man, nerdy young man, come up to me sometime after I've been using her, this example. And he said, can you just lay off Kylie? Some of us really love her. I went, oh, fair enough, mate. Sorry. Yeah. See? Yeah. I know. And then, of course, she got breast cancer. So I had to stop. For a couple of years there, I'd stopped saying anything about her, where she orients her bosoms, because I thought, well, that's a cheap shot, isn't it? But now it's all back on for young and old. I don't know, she's still around, isn't she? Yeah. Okay, line your back. Bring your arms up towards the ceiling. And with this tendency to arch your back forwards and going more to the top of your head, think about your right arm reaching forwards to sit you up more on the right hip. So you can make a bit of a slightly different pathway. Right, so it's not coming straight up, it's going more to the right. Just do it once, it's no big deal. And think it through if you need be. Like, and maybe you can imagine that someone holds you by the right hand and says, here, let me help you sit up. Another variation. Yeah, so now Sylvia just did it and she oriented the trajectory, the pathway of her hand was very different. She thought about her hand going up towards the ceiling and that triggered it for her. But that's Sylvie. I'm not saying it's the way, it's just that she played around, she kept herself soft enough and played around. That works. Now that's not in the instructions at all, that keeping the hand going, it's actually saying reaching forward. But for her system, that made sense. So this is where the play and the curiosity can kind of come in. You know, I've given you some parameters. So it made sense to Alison up to a point. You know, but you weren't as oriented to the ceiling. You know, it was more up and forward. You want to use your elbow, yeah. You want to do all sorts of things. You want to throw the book at me. You want to, you know, some of you will want to hit me. But, and come up to sitting some way. Now have your arms behind your back, so your legs are in front. They can be softly bent if that's more comfortable. And your arms are behind, holding the opposite elbows, or in the direction of the opposite. So your arms are folded behind you. Now notice that to do that, it rounds your back. Could you find a way that you can use your arms in the small of your back and the lower back? It arches you more. So between that, they kind of push you forward in the middle of you, yeah? And in that kind of orientation, start going back more towards the right elbow or the left elbow. You go down towards the right elbow, include the left elbow, and then roll up. I stay somewhat on the horizon, and there's this idea that your arms can keep your chest forward. That's okay. Up to a point, it's okay, because that can actually switch your psoas off. So just notice the difference. Yeah. But it might actually just take the pressure off it as well. Actually, for you, I think I can see why that works. Yeah. Or whether your knees are actually flopped out. Your knees are bent, are they flopped out, or are they still somewhat in line? Try both. So for Angela, actually flopping them out a bit helps her access her psoas a little bit more. Anatomically, keeping your knees in line with your feet is more the direction of pull for psoas. Don't fuss about what I'm saying if it doesn't. It's a side issue. And as you go down onto the one elbow, you can use, coming up off your left, remember right back on Monday, no you don't have to. The opposite shoulder can help bring you up, or the opposite bosom actually. Yeah, think about leading with the bosom. Reverse the circle. And some of you are going fast, which is make it fun, do it, you know. Have it a bit fun, it's so intense. Whee! As you do it, just everyone go, whee! Good. That's it. Lie on your back. let the floor iron out the kink. Interlace your hands behind your head. Your legs are wide. Establish that kind of arch in the back, forward arch, up the point. And then bring your legs up into the air, relatively straight. Behind the head, behind your head. Yeah, cradling your head, back of your head. So your head's just sitting in the hand. And have your legs up in the air, somewhat wide. And make sure that when your legs are up, it'll want to flatten the small of your back. Can you have your legs up in the air and maintain the arch in your back? So have your legs quite high, otherwise they have to work. Can you arch your back with your legs in the air? Legs wide, really. So ladies here, birthing class. Thanks. Oh, when you laugh, your belly's let go. That's good. So, okay, keep that arch in the back. Beck's walking in going, what the hell, birthing class? Yeah, and you're more towards the top of your head, so your back is arched. So your head's on the ground, head's on the ground, head's on the ground. No, not that wide. You're just showing off because you've got the range. So about there, that's perfect. Okay, and now as your back is arched, your hands are behind your head, find a way to keep this orientation of your belly forward, chest forward. Now lower your legs and come up to sitting with your back arched. And cheat, use momentum. What the hell? Like, you know, it's only me looking. Can you use momentum and come up with your back arched? Don't pull your head. So if your head comes forward, like you're pulling on your head, like your belly comes forward. If you can't do it, it doesn't matter. Like really, seriously, you've lived a good, fulfilling life without doing this. And if your inner mantra is, Susan can't do it, play that card. Doesn't matter. Actually, this bit I can do. You can do it with inertia, with momentum. Yeah, and that's, but for now, that's fine, because then you can, you know, you play with your cards that you've got for now. And know that, you know, the Kano can do it without inertia. And you go, good for him. May he live a long and prosperous life. Okay, stay in sitting. And even in the sitting, you just find the position. You know, you found the start position, lying on your back with your legs in the air and arching your back. More towards the top of your head. Now in this position, have your hands interlaced behind your head. And arch your back. Your legs are spread apart. And in this position, just slowly tip yourself back with your back arched, leaning backwards. The movement is of the whole trunk in the hip joint. And you might find a point where you fall, and just fall. Doesn't matter. Like, who cares? So you go back as far as you can control, and then when you find that tipping point, just tip and have a bit of fun. It's all got too serious, hasn't it? No, you're actually very good. I'm really mean about saying that. I mean, back up again. We'll try, see if we can get internet connection. It doesn't really can. Can you put it on Facebook, somebody said? Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. I said pretty much. Oh, is this just, yeah, oh, yeah, she's just, yeah, you can see the power of the word just, don't you? Like, okay. Okay, line your back for a moment. So make it, if you would like your knees to be slightly bent, that up in the air, that's fine. And think this through, that your arms are going to be forward of you, both arms. Just think it through first. Think it through first. Imagine it. That your arms are towards the ceiling, your back is going to arch, so you're long in the front, shorter in the back, and that you're bringing your eyes to the horizon, coming up to sitting, and then all the way up to standing. Okay, so notice that response, that now in that response, there's going to be a breath hold. So just notice that preparation, right? Because that is the preparation of the preparation, is that response. So just notice that. And I mean just notice it. It's a very simple thing, notice that. Your legs can do anything. At this point in time, your legs can do anything. They can go out for a walk. Imagine it as far as you can, and notice in the imagining what you can't imagine. And there are aspects of this that I find difficult to imagine. Now, this is the movement that in Zoran's memory, when we did this series when Larry was teaching, Larry did this thing where he held my head and he brought me up into standing through this Kata maneuver. And Zoran's memory is that I did it, that Larry could do it with me, and he couldn't, and with Zoran not. I have no memory of this at all. Like, I actually do think that Zoran's making it up. Oh no, you're coming up through your bottom. You're not a stick. You're folding in the hips, and then your head keeps coming forward, and you come up onto your feet. Now, so there is something in my system that knows how to do it under the guidance of Larry. I mean, Larry and I, we're good mates, and I trust him, right? So there's a whole gestalt there around when his hands were holding my head when he was guiding me, my system trusted him and my system organised it to allow it to happen. On my own devices, Snowflake counts, things help. Right? So this is interesting in itself, isn't it? Okay, and if you're up for it, try. Try! Not that word again. How many times have I said that badly? All right, arms forward. Now, the instruction is the legs long. I'm letting you experiment. Because actually to come up to standing, it's easier to have your legs kind of prepared. But if they're too far bent, they'll block you. Right? So just be aware of that. And have a crack. Have a crack. Fail miserably. It's fine. Like you're amongst friends. No? Yeah, just fail miserably. It's fine. What 2 centimeters of this could feel nice? That's the point. Even if it's 2 centimeters in your imagination. I'll read exactly what it says. On back, arms forward, arch to sit, stand, roll back, and return. That's it. Yeah. So have a crack at this. Yeah. So some of you are crossing your ankles, that's fine. Kano doesn't do it. No, it's fine. There's no constraint. I've given you all I've got. There's one more thing that we'll finish off with. So don't feel like this is the end, my friend. Quote the Doors. Lovely. Roll back, line your back for a moment. And now think it through with a slight variation. So the beautiful dentist has given us compromise. So lying on your back, have your legs up in the air. One straight and one kind of bent, so that you can come up onto one knee and one foot actually. And your arms are forward, and now roll up to standing. If that goes to the floor, it's not going to work. You've got to roll over that leg. So when it bent and out to the side would be more to the point. Yeah, and then you can come up into half kneel stand and stand up from there. Or not. Yeah. Yeah. So you're coming up onto one knee and one foot. That might help. And you can use momentum. Dastardly. So this is not a public lesson class. How many times have I said that? No. Yeah, you know, for acrobats, yeah. Remember in the Adelaide training, the group there was a couple of people who were gymnasts, not gymnasts, in the circus actually. One was a dancer, two circus people, and the other group used to call them the super movers. And they could do this stuff, but they weren't necessarily well organised. And they couldn't necessarily feel that the opportunity to really nut something out, because they could just power through it. They were young and flexible. So they got really cross with the group calling them the super movers, because they said, you're missing the point of that we've got to learn a lot of stuff. Because we can so-called do the outcome easily, but we don't know how we're doing it, and we can't break it down, and it's not reversible. So they actually in the end, kind of as a group said to the others, stop calling us the super movers, because you're kind of diminishing our opportunities to learn. It's a really interesting process. It's a really interesting process to have that. And equalise out the group again. And that's what we tend to do, is we create these ideals of things, and that's in that creation, it's not helpful. It's not helpful for anybody. So that was a great process to watch. Lie on your back. And contemplate your own learning in this series. So I've been sharing with you my learning. So where is my learning taking me? I'm still intrigued. I still choose to be intrigued by this series of lessons, even though I can't do this. Now, what does the phrase "I can't do this" mean? Now, that's turned it into a dichotomy, right? You can either do it or you can't do it. That in itself is not helpful. So within this series of explorations, I have had tremendous learning. What can I lie now and think about that I find extremely satisfying? I have learned about myself. I've learned about the lesson. I have some ideas that I want to continue to explore when I go home, in the privacy of my own home. And for me, I come out with this is so fantastic. I'm a work in progress. I have learned some more about this lesson. I've learned about myself. I've learned a lot watching you guys. How do I find satisfaction? Though in the face of it, I still, if I dichotomize it, I still can't do it. If I stay with that dichotomy, it's not satisfying, right? But if I have broken it down and I've considered the whole of the process, I feel tremendously satisfied. How is that for you? How are you going to stand up and walk away with this lesson? Where is your satisfaction? Now, if you choose to use this lesson as another stick to beat yourself up a bit about, oh God, I'm so stiff, I'm so coordinated, I'm so dumb, I'm so this, I'm so that. Know that that is your choice. You choose to focus on what I can't do. And that's fine, that's a choice. You're an adult and you all said yesterday, it's on the board for you, this process is self-responsibility to make decisions, self-direction, self-discovery. You put those words I just wrote. That was before you were all dead to me. And I'm reading them off the board. So live that, right? And whatever response you have to this lesson, understand that that is your choice. And you are actually free to change that choice. Your response to these things is your choice. The lesson is the lesson. My teaching is my teaching. That's not something that you've got an influence over. But your response to it is where you have the choice. Fabulous. Thank you. I think you should give yourself a round of applause for that. Yay. Roll up to sitting and standing. I notice nobody comes up in the kata. I would say that's a sensible choice. You know, it's weird. Okay, so I won't say anymore. Tired. Especially your brain muscle. Have a little walk. And what's the influence of this on your walking? Kylie. Okay, have a cup of tea. And after morning tea, we're going to explore the knee joint.